Shalom. Time to read Leviticus chapter 14. And I apologize ahead of time because I'll be looking downward so I could read the word. And Yahu'ah spoke to Moshe, saying, This shall be the Torah of the leper. For the day of his cleansing he shall be brought to the Kohan. And the Kohan shall go out of the camp, and the Kohan shall look and see if the leprosy is healed in the leper. Then the Kohan shall command, and he shall take for him who is to be cleansed 2 live and clean birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And the Kohan shall command, and he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. Let him take the live bird, and the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them and the live bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy. And he shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird loose in the open field. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave off all his hair, and wash himself in the water, and shall be clean. Then after that he comes into the camp, but shall stay outside the tent 7 days. And on the 7th day it shall be that he shaves all the hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shaves off. And he shall wash his garments, and wash his body in water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he takes 2 male lambs, 1 perfect, one ewe lamb, a year old, a perfect one, and 3/10 parts of fine flour mixed with oil, as a grain offering, in 1 log of oil. And the Kohan who is cleansing shall present the man who is to be cleansed with these before Yahu'ah at the door of the tent of appointment. And the Kohan shall take 1 male lamb, and bring it as a guilt offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yahu'ah. And he shall slaughter the lamb in the place where he slaughters the sin offering and burnt offering, in a Kedash place. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the Kohan. It is most Kedash. And when the Kohan shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the Kohan shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who he is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the Kohan shall take some of the log of oil, and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. And the Kohan shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahu'ah. And the rest of the oil in his right hand, the Kohan puts some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the Kohan's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, And the Kohan shall make atonement for him before Yahu'ah. And the Kohan shall make the sin offering, and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanliness. Then afterwards his slaughters the burnt offering. And the Kohan shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. And the Kohan shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and is unable to afford it, then he shall take one male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil. And 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. And one shall be the sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. And he shall bring them to the Kohan on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tent of appointment before Yahu'ah. And the Kohan shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the Kohan shall wave them as a wave offering before Yahu'ah. And he shall slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and the Kohan shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the Kohan pours some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. And the Kohan shall sprinkle with his right hand finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Yahu'ah. And the Kohan shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. On the place of the blood of the guilt offering, and the rest of the oil that is in the Kohan's hand, he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahu'ah. And he shall prepare one of the turtle doves, or young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. That which he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering, with the grain offering. And the Kohan shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before Yahu'ah. This is the Torah of the one who had an infection of leprosy, who was unable to afford for his cleansing. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put a plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possession, then shall the one who owns the house come and inform the Kohan, saying, It seems to me that there is some plague in the house. And the Kohan shall command, and they shall empty the house before the Kohan goes in to look at the plague, so that all that is in the house is not made unclean. And after that, the Kohan goes in to look at the house. And he shall look at the plague and see if the plague is on the walls of the house with the sunken places, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall. Then the Kohan shall go out of the house to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. And the Kohan shall come again on the 7th day, and look and see. If the plague has spread on the walls of the house, then the Kohan shall command, and they shall remove the stones with the plague in them, and they shall throw them outside the city into an unclean place. Well, he lets the house be scraped inside, all around, and the dust that they scrap off they shall pour out into an unclean place outside the city. And they shall take other stones and put them in place of those stones, and take other mortar and plaster in the house. And if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house after he has removed the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it has been plastered, then the Kohen shall come and look and see if the plague has spread in the house. It is an active leprosy in the house, it is unclean. And he shall break down the house, its stones and its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall bring them outside the city to an unclean place. And he who goes into the house all the days while it is shut up become unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house has to wash his garments, and he who has eaten in the house has to wash his garments. However, if the Kohen indeed comes in and looks at it and sees that the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the Kohen shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And to cleanse the house he shall take 2 birds and cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop. And he shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird in the running water, and shall sprinkle the house 7 times. And thus the house with the blood and the bird and the running water and the live bird and the cedar wood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. And he shall let loose the live bird outside the city in an open field. And shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy and eruption, and for leprosy of a garment and of a house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot. To each when it is unclean, and when it is clean, that is the Torah of leprosy. Chapter 15. And Yahu'ah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Yisrael, and say to them, when any man has a disadvantage from his discharge from his flesh, his discharge is unclean. And this is his uncleanness in regard to his discharge, whether his flesh runs with his discharge, or his flesh is stopped up by his discharge. It is his uncleanness. Any bed becomes unclean on which he who has the discharge lies, and any object on which he sits becomes unclean. And anyone who touches his bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who sits on any object on which he who has the discharge sat has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the flesh of him who has the discharge has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and shall be unclean until evening. And when he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, then he shall wash his garments, and he shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which he who has the discharge rides becomes unclean. And whoever touches any of that which was under him is unclean until evening. And he who is carrying them up has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And anyone who And anyone whom he who has the discharge touches without rinsing his hands in water shall wash his garments and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And the earthen vessel which he who has the discharge touches has to be broken, and every wooden vessel has to be rinsed in water. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe his flesh in running water, and be clean. And on the 8th day he takes for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and shall come before Yahu'ah to the door of the tent of appointment, and shall give them to the Kohan. And the Kohan shall prepare them, one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the Kohan shall make atonement for him before Yahu'ah because of his discharge. And when a man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment and any leather on which there is semen shall also be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they both shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her flesh is blood, she has to be in her separation for 7 days. And whoever touches her is unclean until evening. And whatever she lies on during her separation is unclean, and whatever she sits on is unclean. And anyone who touches her bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches any object that she sat on has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And if it is on the bed, or any object on which she sits, when he touches it, he is unclean until evening. And if any man lies with her at all, and her monthly flow is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and any bed he lies on is unclean. And when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of her monthly separation, or when she discharges beyond her usual time of monthly separation, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her monthly separation. She is unclean. And any bed on which she lies, all the days of her discharge, is to her as the bed of her monthly separation. And whatever she sits on is unclean, as the uncleanness of her monthly separation. And anyone who touches them is unclean, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she is clean. And on the 8th day she takes for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and shall bring them to the Kohan to the door of the tent of appointment. And the Kohan shall prepare the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the Kohan shall make atonement for her before Yahu'ah, for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus you shall separate the children of Yisrael from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness, when they defile my Mishkan, which is in their midst. This is the Torah for the one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is sick in her monthly separation, and for one who has a discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with an unclean woman. Leviticus chapter 16. And Yahu'ah spoke to Moshe after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before Yahu'ah and died. And Yahu'ah said to Moshe, Speak to Aaron your brother, not to come in at all times to the Kadesh place in the veil before the lid of atonement, which is on the ark, lest he die, because I appear in the cloud above the lid of atonement. With this, Aaron should come into the Kadesh place, with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering, and of a ram as a burnt offering. He should put on the Kadesh linen long shirt with linen trousers on his flesh, and gird himself with a linen girdle, and be dressed with the fine linen turban. They are Kadesh garments, and he shall bathe his body in water, and shall put them on. And from the congregation of the children of Yisrael, he takes 2 male goats as a sin offering, and 1 ram as a burnt offering. And Aaron shall bring the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats and let them stand before Yahuwah at the door of the tent of appointment. And Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for Yahuwah and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the lot for Yahuwah fell, and shall prepare it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell is caused to stand alive before Yahuwah, to make atonement upon it, to send it into the wilderness to Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall slaughter the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself. And he shall take a fire holder filled with burning coals of fire from the altar before Yahuwah, with his hands filled with sweet incense, beaten fine, and shall bring it inside the veil. And he shall put on the incense on the fire before Yahuwah, and the cloud of incense shall cover the lid of atonement, which is on the witness, lest he die. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the lid of atonement, on the east side, also in the front of the lid of atonement. He sprinkles some of the blood with his finger 7 times. And he shall slaughter the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, and shall bring its blood inside the veil, and shall do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the lid of atonement and in front of the lid of atonement. And he shall make atonement for the Kadesh place, because of the uncleanness of the children of Yisrael, and because of their transgressions and all their sins. And so he does for the tent of appointment, which is dwelling with them in the midst of their uncleanness. And no man should be in the tent of appointment when he goes in to make atonement in the Kadesh place, until he comes out. And he shall make atonement for himself and for his household and for all the assembly of Yisrael. And he shall go out to the altar that is before Yahuwah and make atonement for it. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and some of the blood of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar all around. And he shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his fingers 7 times, and cleanse it, and kadosh it from the uncleanness of the children of Yisrael. And when he has finished atoning for the Kadesh place, in the tent of appointment, in the altar he shall bring the live goat. Then Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, and shall confess over it all the wickedness of the children of Yashrael, and all their transgressions, and all their sins, and shall put them on the head of the goat, and shall send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a fit man. And the goat shall bear on itself all their wickedness to a land cut off. Thus he shall send the goat away into the wilderness. Aaron shall then come into the tent of appointment, and shall take off the linen garments which he put on when he went into the Kiddush place, and shall leave them there. And he shall bathe his body in water in the Kiddush place, and shall put on his garments, and shall come out and prepare his burnt offering, and the burnt offering of the people, and make atonement for himself and for his people. And burn the fat of the sin offering on the altar. And he who sent away the goat to Azazel washes his garments, and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward he comes into the camp. And the bull for the sin offering, and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the Kiddush place, is brought outside the camp, and they shall burn their skins and their flesh and their dung with fire. And he who burns them washes his garments, and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward he comes into the camp. And this shall be for you a law forever. In the 7th month of the 10th day of the month you afflict your beings, and do no work, the native or the stranger who sojourns among you. For on that day he makes atonement for you, to cleanse you, to be clean from all your sins before Yahu'ah. It is a Sabbath of rest for you, and you shall afflict your beings, a law forever. And the Kohan who is anointed and ordained to serve as Kohan in his father's place shall make atonement, and shall put on the linen garments, the Kiddush garments. And he shall make atonement for the Kiddush Midkash, and make atonement for the tent of appointment, and for the altar, and make atonement for the Kohanim, and for all the people of the assembly. And this shall be for you a law forever, to make atonement for the children of Yashrael for all their sins once a year. And he did as Yahuwah commanded to Moshe.